So this week we are learning about negative messages. They are also called bad news letters or bad news messages. A negative message is a message in any type of format. What that means is a letter, an email, a memo that anticipates an emotional reaction from the reader of the message, usually some type of unpleasant news. However, not all messages saying no are negative. For a message to be negative, the reader, meaning the audience's ego, their well-being, there must be some kind of emotional reaction in the outcome. So even just directing somebody to another department, maybe they're in the wrong location because you don't provide what they are asking about, is a type of negative message as well, because you have to direct them elsewhere. You have to tell them, no, you can't help them. And you don't know how they might react. So there's some kind of reaction with them. You have to consider audience reaction with these because you don't want to damage the quality of the relationship. You don't want to damage your ethics as a professional communicator. And you want to be really careful when you consider language when delivering the negative news. So there's different types of formats. I'm actually going to scroll to something else though. There's different types of formats because this week we're talking about formats with these negative messages. There's two different types. There's indirect approaches versus direct. You have to consider the audience's well-being and what they are anticipating for you to choose what style. So the direct format is when the audience is anticipating bad news. They are expecting it. So you can be direct where you immediately say no, meaning the purpose, and then you can go into the reasons for the bad news. So I'm actually not going to spend too much time on the direct approach because I don't want you to use that this week. We're actually going to talk about the indirect approach. But just to summarize, the direct is where you open with the negative news. And the reason why is because the audience is anticipating it. So you're not shocking them. But I want to spend more time right now on this lecture on the indirect because that's what your writing activity is going to focus on. You're going to write an indirect negative message. This you have to be a little more careful with because the indirect approach is if the audience isn't expecting to hear bad news. They're expecting things to go their way and their way only. So you have to think about your well-being, your credibility, and you can't quote shock them with the bad news. You have to ease them into it. So it has a particular format, and we're going to go into that next in the following slides. So the indirect message opens with a buffer. A buffer is just a sentence that creates common ground between you and the reader. Maybe if you need to express appreciation, thank you for reaching out about your concerns. It needs to be relevant, though. You don't want too much what we call fluff, where it's, maybe an entire paragraph, and that's just a little too much. You just want some kind of cushion where you guide them into the next part of the message. So open with some kind of buffer. Thank you for reaching out. I'm glad you're voicing your concerns, something like that. Give the reasons next in the next paragraph. In this portion, you provide explanations for the bad news. But before you even state the bad news, it's best to start with positive points first. What are good points that the person is saying? Highlight those first. Highlight something positive first. Then you move into the negative points. You kind of lead them in this way so that they start to feel that there's some kind of bad news coming. So another type of indirect message is if somebody is rejected for a job, where they open with a buffer and they say, thank you for taking the time to apply to this position. It's some kind of one sentence buffer. Then maybe the letter starts to say, you're a really motivated person, you sound very organized, and it's great that you took the time to share these skills with us. Our job is looking for somebody with a little more experience in marketing. you demonstrated slight skill in this, but we are looking for somebody with 5 years of experience instead of the 1 year that you had. You know, something like that where you're still respecting them. You're respecting them for taking the time. And then the third paragraph is where you clearly state the negative news. So that way, the buffer and the explanations get the reader ready for the bad news. So if this was a job rejection letter, you've said thank you for applying, you've highlighted skills the candidate has, and started to mention what your job is looking for in particular. So one statement of the bad news could be, however, you weren't accepted for this position. That way it's not that shocking. If you started this letter with, hey, you weren't accepted for this job, it's very shocking, right? And it's not professional. So you have to guide them to that purpose statement. The purpose statement gets pushed to the third paragraph in the indirect method. And then you want to close positively. Try to limit too much positivity where it sounds fake or it doesn't sound sincere. You know, what do you want the audience to do next? What action should they take after reading this? Maybe if it was a job rejection letter, you know, you could say, we encourage you to look out for other positions with our company. We would love to hear your success in the field that you were interested in. You know, something quick, but you're also not leaving anything open where they think they have room to get more out of you if it's not necessary. So I have better buffer statements that I want to show you all on here. And this is just a quick little PowerPoint file writing a negative letter. We talked about in the lecture the direct versus the indirect. The direct is where the audience is anticipating, they are expecting bad news, so you open with the bad news. However, we are focusing right now on the indirect. So like we said, paragraph 1 opens with some type of buffer statement. A buffer creates common ground. It's usually about 1 to 2 sentences in the paragraph. If you have no idea what a buffer statement is and you want to look a little bit more, this link right here, you have to scroll a little bit on that page, but they mentioned that there's a section heading that mentions good buffer statements to go into. So let's take a look at those. Buffer. Thank you for your order. We appreciate your interest in our product, and we are confident you will love it. It's a good buffer. And there's a lot more on this page. If you want to, when you click the link, you'll see some more. There's some. This is actually a good chart because it's, what are you trying to say? Are you trying to start with some good news? Are you trying to compliment somebody? Are you trying to express gratitude? Are you in agreement with something that they are saying? So this is a great list of buffer ideas. So that's paragraph 1. And then paragraph 2, give the reasons. Again, you want to lead to the bad news. Don't state the bad news just yet in this paragraph, but lead to it. And what we mean by that is in the indirect approach, it's best to start with positive points about the candidate or about the person or just about what they're saying first. Then you move into some negative points. And this portion helps so that paragraph 3 isn't a shock. And again, table 832, so let's hop over to that. 832 has a great example as well. We are writing to let you know this product has been unexpectedly popular. You're saying some good things about the product. There was a lot of orders. So we don't know what the bad news is yet, right, with this? We're not quite sure what it is yet. And then if we get to paragraph 3, that's where you hit them with the bad news. That's where you get that 1-sentence purpose statement. In the previous buffer and explanation paragraphs, we prepared the reader. So this part is where you can finally directly state the bad news in try to make the bad news 1 sentence. Be clear and concise. Use transition words in this sentence to guide the reader. Therefore, so, thus, however, all that fun stuff. So what's the bad news with this? This unexpected increase in demand has resulted in temporary out-of-stock back order. Uh-oh. So that's what's happening. That's their bad news, that sentence right there. And then they explain a little bit why. You can either explain a little bit first. They mentioned the delay, and there's a fulfillment of the order, and then say, so it's back ordered, we can't get it to you on time. but you need that one sentence purpose statement to be the final point of why you're sending the letter. This is one right here too. Therefore, we were unable to refund your purchase. And then you can't just end there. That'd be really random to end there. It's a little unprofessional. You need some kind of closing thought. So close positively, but not over exaggerated. You don't want to come off fake or insincere, or that you're just trying to look good. So avoid, and you don't want to leave any open room for interpretation. So try to limit hints of future correspondence if it's not necessary. But just answer this question. What do you encourage the audience to do next? What action should they take next? So if we go into this chart, while you wait for the product, we encourage you to use a coupon towards the purchase of anything you want. We appreciate your continued business. So they're closing contact there, right? They're not saying that they're not leaving it open to communication, but they're also giving the audience respect. So that's an example of the bad news negative letter. Take a look at this link, spend some time with it when you write yours, but make sure when you write that you're using this indirect message where the bad news is pushed to paragraph 3. Bad news is one sentence, but you guide them with explanations for the bad news first.